In this day and age, the roles each gender is expected to play are very clear, and we very seldom question these stereotypes. So I asked 5 people, each with different backgrounds and outlooks on the matter, their opinions on different issues within the subject of gender roles.
I think men are generally expected to to be the financial provider. I think men are expected to be emotionally. Men can express various forms of anger or detachment, but nothing much beyond that. Um, I think that socially, men are supposed to be always in a state of competition, and really, if you're not um, if you're not the top person, then you are less than. So I think those are the roles that men play out. Generally speaking, or historically speaking, women are expected to be the invisible and silent um, other half of humanity, unless it suits the needs of men that they be heard or listened to. Um, and really, like their identities, I think, are expected to be that as defined by whatever the power position is, which would be that of men, I would think.
Males are usually their role is to be a little bit stronger emotionally. Females are usually not as strong emotionally, but then again, they can be a whole lot stronger in certain circumstances. So it's ebb and flow back and forth.
No, I mean they've done research throughout different cultures, different societies. Some that are that have a lot of gender bias, some that are more egalitarian, and it has shown that when you give people openness and freedom to choose the course in life they wish, people are happier. People generally there's less turmoil. There's uh, you know greater greater peace both economically, socially. People just become healthier overall, and so no, they're not in any way required.
I think gender roles are critical to a functioning society. I think that too often these days they're blurred, and if we learned to accept a lot of the roles, not always. There's certainly equality, and there's lots of things that each gender can do, but there are certain things that I think each gender tends to be better at.
The idealistic part of me says no, it's not necessary. Functional roles are what are more important. That doesn't necessarily fall in line with gender. You know what I mean? Social roles, I think, are more important. Um, Functional roles, gender roles, not so much.
I think that there's nothing wrong with gender specific toys, and to try to eliminate is to try to eliminate gender, which is ludicrous. That's not to say that boys can't play with dolls and girls can't play with machine gun toys or whatever. Certainly, that's fine. But to try to eliminate gender specific toys is like trying to eliminate gender, which is equally as ridiculous.
I have two small children now, and like I see my son, for instance, he'll pick up if one of his sister's toys that happen to be like more like for girls, say like her My Little Pony. He doesn't know, and she picks up a lightsaber like she doesn't know, and yet they doesn't seem to diminish their fun or their imagination or their ability to interact with each other or the world around them.
Me personally, I think so. But I think males who show emotion on any level are perceived as being maybe weaker by society at large. I think that should change.
Yes, and I think not doing so has very devastating effects, and we've seen that statistically. The suicide rates among teenagers and just among males in general is higher than with females because of the fact that they don't have a way of expressing those issues, those emotions. Because the second they do that, they express those emotions or have some sort of emotional, intimacy. It's considered weak or feminine, or they're considered gays, and so I think that's definitely something that is important for both genders and for people as a whole. People need to be able to express their emotions and their problems.
Yeah, I think they should be registered, but how they're used is another thing. I mean, there is a difference between men and women in military, and upper body strength has a lot to do with it. Women are just naturally not have the upper body strength that men do, so in combat roles and things of that nature require that.
I don't believe that women should be required to register for selective service. I don't believe that that level of equality is necessary. I think, again, that's going too far with political correctness. So the answer would be no.
And I don't think it's a bad idea, because I think it's good to be invested in the wellness of your country. So I think it's a good idea.
I think women make less money than men because men are generally the ones in power when it comes to economics, and it's an ego thing. And it goes back to like the kindergarten, our middle or elementary school. Oh, you got beaten by a girl, or oh, that girl's stronger than you, or that girl's smarter than you. And there's nothing more fragile historically than male ego. So I don't know.
I mean, you can talk about any number of factors. You can talk about the fact that women do get pregnant, and of course there is always the possibility for maternity leave. But I think I've seen a number of studies that have shown that when all factors are taken into account, the job, the position, the education level, there are still discrepancies between income. And I think on some level, a factor that plays a role is the quote unquote good old boys club. If generally speaking, men gravitate to hang out with other men, and women tend to hang out with each other, and so I think if you have a group of guys or a group of men who work together and they have a sort of a communal bond, they're more likely to welcome in another man into that environment rather than welcome in a woman. And so doing so is something that whether they realize it or not, they're not open to. And I think a lot of times when you look at the people who are in power, and since men hold a far greater number of positions of power, then it's they're going to continue to make those decisions because of that mentality.
I'm a firm believer in equal pay for equal work, but the key word there is equal. Now, if you're using your mental, I think that would be equal. Whereas things that require, again, upper body strength, and you're paying a woman to do the same as a man, but then she can't do it, is that equal?
I think every person should be raised individually, like to who they are as people. I think you deal with people on an individual basis, but in terms of for example, if my son were of age and he is having a whole bunch of promiscuous relationships, that should not be something to celebrate just because he's a boy. Nor should it be something to shame in my daughter if she's doing the same thing. It's not about. It should be about what is ethical, what is unethical, what is right, what is wrong, not just based on your gender. Oh, there's different rules. There shouldn't be double standards.
As a mother of 3 girls, that's hard for me to answer because I don't have another point of view. I don't have another gendered child to tell you that I raised them differently. I think I would be less sensitive about feelings if that were the case. And maybe that's just because I was raised in an era where kids were boys. If they fell down or if they got hurt, it was, come on, be tough, man up, things like that. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, but I don't really have a reference point, so it's hard to say.
Well, women are in fields today that they 100 years ago they were you didn't see female doctors or lawyers or architects or things of that nature. Women have filled a lot of roles. I think a lot of that had to do with necessity during wartime, World War One and World War Two. But women today are, yes, the roles have changed completely. Not completely, but a lot.
They've changed a lot. It's in the last 40 years in my life, they've changed a lot. My father, for instance, probably never changed a diaper. I would say that I changed a very large amount of diapers growing up. I wanted to be a part of it. My dad was never in the delivery room when all of my siblings and I were being born. I helped deliver my children. There's a huge change that's gone on when it comes to that, and I think that's a positive. I think that there's a certain extent to which that becomes enough, and when you try to blur to the point where you're gender blind, then you're just being foolish.
I'd say in terms of the things that we value, like money, position, power, respect, those things, I think it's easier to be male. But I think because the system itself is just so flawed, and the way that we've set up society in so many ways is so flawed that like both sides get damaged. Like it is damaging in a different way to be a man, even though we seem to hold every advantage because we're not allowing this other aspect of our existence to be acknowledged. And of course, it's obviously at a disadvantage for females because they're never allowed into like these nexus of power where they could actually contribute equally with their voice, with their ideas, things like that.
Male, by far.
I feel is to observe and think about what's around me and to provide the best example I can of what it means to be a human being as I understand it. And hopefully that will be accessible for both women and men. And I think it's to learn and to listen and to also then find the gaps in my own thinking and my own hidden biases or prejudices that I might have.
To educate. And yes, it goes without saying, but I think I make it a goal to educate in everything I do. Whether people like it or not, I will always use it as an opportunity to impart knowledge on somebody when I see a lack of knowledge being demonstrated, which, if you've talked to people, is pretty often.
To not be a draw on society, for one thing. I guess at the heart of it all, to not have society raise me and take care of me is a big deal for me. To be responsible for my family, for my business is important to me. Self-responsibility is a big deal to me.
I think in society I function as a mother, as in support of a small business owner, and someone that can make household decisions as well. So, I mean, it's multifaceted, but that's just how women have to be these days.
To be an honest, decent, productive person.